join me for a drink? Won't you join me for a drink?
Hello, Internet. My name is John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, 10-year user of R for normal statistical purposes. And for the last 7 or 8 years, I've also been using R to author things. So wrapping my statistical analyses into a broader document, and that might be a technical report or a feedback report or a website or a presentation deck or an academic paper. So every week, I get together and some of my compatriots who are doing similar things occasionally stop by. And we're here if anyone is interested in doing this and wants to just bend some ears on other people who do it. But we also attempt to explore different features. And last week did not go well. So last week we ran into a massive obstacle, which hopefully we'll overcome tonight. Well, that happens occasionally, I suppose. But we were trying to replicate a university syllabus using this newish document type called a Typst document. And the Typst scripting produces PDFs. I have a academic syllabus that I've used that was written with the traditional scripting to produce a PDF document, which is called LaTeX, or some people prefer LaTeX. And we were just trying to replicate that. And so ran into an issue with tables. And so tonight we're gonna see if we can get the tables formatted like we want them to be formatted using the Typst specification. And I think we'll probably have time to get to a few other things. We probably won't do a full replication of the syllabus tonight, I'm guessing, because right before popping on here, I just expanded this slide deck that's available in the comments if you want to access it. But I just expanded this to annotate kind of what we still need to do. And as lists sometimes go, as I've written the first thing, second thing, third thing, and by the time you get to the seventh thing, you realize, oh, okay. It's probably a good idea that I annotated this, listed it, but it's a little daunting, a little anxiety provoking. So we have, in addition to the tables, I've identified other little things that are probably helpful to try to get a full replication with, instead of just viewing it as one whole document. Now we just have little tangible, biteable pieces, I think, that we can take care of. Tonight, I think we should be able to get the tables aspect figured out. The caveat that I usually mention at this point as well is that the initial thought of these weekly sessions was to help people when they have issues or encounter problems, kind of like what we had last week in terms of tables not looking like exactly what we wanted them to look like. So our thought was we could be a resource if people want some help overcoming those sorts of obstacles. And that's always going to be available. So we will always make a priority if somebody pops by and has a question and wants to bend our ear about that. If you're whatever you're trying to do, it's there's so many nice resources out there to overcome a little sticking point. But it's also helpful to have some other people to talk to who maybe have encountered that before, or who maybe have some different ideas for how to overcome. Diego, one of our co-hosts here, his standard methodology for overcoming is more and more people, their standard procedure to overcome obstacles is to consult with an AI agent. Um, so I'm slowly getting one over there as well. I still kind of view AI as a souped up Google or a better Google in terms of finding an answer that you need to something, and I think I need to reframe my thoughts on that probably because that's I think limiting its potential for my workflows. But anyway, I'm getting better. So I didn't use any AI this week to help kind of get a leg up on these tables that we're hopefully going to overcome tonight. But if we get stuck, maybe we'll do that. Maybe we can do that. All right, so let's get our transition here into what happened last week.
Last time our heroes learned from Captain Peter Peachfuzz, the new head of G2, the strange story of upsidasium, discovered on the slopes of Mount Flatten by an old prospector. This fabulous anti-gravity metal had set scientists on their ears until the entire world's supply had been lost by accident. Not only that, but when the old prospector learned that the mountain was already owned by Bullwinkle's uncle, he said,
"Well, he'll never find it."
Why not?
"Because it's nowhere to find."
Gee, a lost mountain, and now it's all yours, Bullwinkle.
Yeah, it's the nicest present I never had.
On to Mount Flatten, hey, fellas?
well, almost anyway, for on the track ahead, Boris Baranov waited beside an open switch.
Boris, darling, why you wrecking train?
He's on train, moose and squirrel. They won't give us the to Hopsidasium mine, so...
You got orders from Central Control?
You think I can't make my own decisions? You think I'm just a stooge for Central Control?
I forgot Peach Fuzz is still there, so I blame last week's failure, I guess we can call it. I blame last week's failure on Peach Fuzz because I think he's just kind of like he's a bad luck token, we call it. Now, last week I'm being a little harsh, wasn't a complete failure. So what we were trying to do was this syllabus that you can see on the left. It's too long. It's an 8-page syllabus for undergraduate class in psychological testing and assessment, which is basically, here's a personality test. This is what it looks like. Here's an intelligence test. These are question types. This syllabus on the left is fully reproduced by the script on the right. The script on the right, on line 5 here, you see the traditional PDF request. And the scripting of this uses a sorry, I am so sorry. I got to disable that mouse wheel. The scripting in this Quarto document uses a combination of LaTeX for some specific formatting features. For example, I thought I had columns in here. And column identification is something that we would have to do with, I guess I'm not sure if we have to, but I would traditionally do through LaTeX. Now, with the newer Quarto specifications with bracketed spans and these fenced divs, it's possible that that would render like we want it to in a PDF. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So the information on the right produces the document on the left. You can access both of these if you want. To get it, should be accessible just through the hyperlink. And what we tried to do was we tried to take, and because we're just learning Typist, it's a newer scripting structure. And so we're trying to replicate what we have in terms of content with the old LaTeX and PDF specifications, and we're going to see if we can do it with a Typist scripting. Now, one thing immediately popped up when we ported this content over to a document that asked for a Typist specification was that the table just looked a little different. We didn't have the heavy line on top and we didn't have the heavy line on the bottom. Not a big deal. But if we're going to fully replicate this and we're going through the exercise, that's something that, ideally we would have better control over. And so we spent quite a bit of time on that. Tonight, I think we'll definitely do that again. We'll make sure that we can get it. It probably is just a trivial. It probably is a trivial matter, but stressing these platforms in terms of applying script and specifications that work previously and have worked and work in different stylings. It's all good information, I think. The thing about Typist is it does look like there's a lot of active development on it, and I did do quite a bit of searching just because we can't have 2 weeks in a row where we don't make good steps towards what we're trying to accomplish here. So I did a little bit of more searching ahead of time than I would normally put in. And I did see that there are some of the functionality that we're looking for is not currently being supported in the current version of Quarto. So this is something that might change over the course of 6 months, a year. Those changes tend to happen fairly quickly as they push out these updates to the software. But there's always a workaround. So we'll try some workarounds. I think I found one that was probably going to work, and then just right before it came on, I had another thought that I think we can try. So we're going to try to replicate not just the content, but we're going to try to replicate the structure. There's nothing special or unique about this syllabus. This isn't the world's best syllabus. But if it was, we'd want to fully replicate it. So let's treat it as though it was. The little things on here that we need to try to stress is we need to try to get an in-text citation that's not in the bibliography, but it's in the main body of the document. I think that's should be a fairly quick and easy. Every time I say that, I jinx myself. But we'll try to get these two references in there. Spoke about it last week. I didn't try it yet, and I don't think I wrote it as something we're going to try, but this supplementary material has an icon to the right of it. There's color in the icon, and there's a hyperlink on that icon. So nothing, it doesn't take a nuclear physicist or a rocket scientist to make that, but it is something that we need to check in Typist and see if the specification in Typist works like it works here. These callout boxes should be fine. We didn't try those last week, but we'll try callout boxes. There's margin content that we put here, and in addition to the margin content, there's some more icons or emojis that are put in there. We got to try that as well, and that is something that might just kind of out of the box have some limitations with it. I did play with emojis a little bit, and so I saw some of those limitations. Another call out, and the rest of it I think is fairly standard. There are some more tables down here. Now this is complex. This is a table with emojis in the table. And again, if you're operating from a normal word processor perspective or from a PowerPoint construction perspective, you might be thinking that that's easy to do because the table itself is just a structure that's within this click and drag kind of format or interface. We don't have that. We're scripting here, so we're fully. We say, hey, give me a monkey covering his eyes, and give me another monkey covering his mouth, and there's no click and drag. That's all scripted. So we need to see if we can get that. And there's color on these tables. These tables are rendering in a format that I would say is consistent with the American Psychological Association stylings, such that the header row has a, a solid line above it and a solid line below it, and at the very bottom of the table there's another solid line. And so that's that's really all we're trying to replicate here. Now there's some color. I don't think that'll be an issue. I think we can do that. There's some dead rows here that have just kind of labels separating content across the course. That shouldn't be a problem either. We should be able to do that. Kind of an ugly table. This one I wouldn't mind changing, but its colors are atrocious. But if we can do the other tables, there's no reason we can't do this one. And then the rest of it's just a wall of text, which my students, for some reason, I don't understand these students. They want walls of text. That's what they've been asking for. So I've changed all of their slides to walls of text. And the syllabus is a wall of text now that we see it, now that I'm looking at it a little more carefully. So I think what we're going to do today is, instead of, we're going to tackle these tables. So we'll see if we can fight with them a little more and be a little more successful maybe in our fight. But as I said, I kind of made a list of things that I think it breaks down the porting over from the current scripting to the Typist type document in terms of little baby steps that we can take to see if we can incorporate these. Now, I put citations first just because I think that should be an easy win, and it's possible that we'll spend more time on the table. I'm guessing we're going to spend more time on the tables. The consistent set of strategies that I was seeing when it comes to formatting tables within Typist, we're using a package that I'm not familiar with. We took a look at it quickly last week, and there's hyperlinks on that slide if you, again, access this week's slides and want to go through the slide deck. GT and Papaja are both hyperlinked here to a little help page. The GT package, it looks like the authors of that are Posit employees, it looks like to me. So the main contributors are from the company that provides us the IDE that we're favoring here, which is our studio, and also the software that we've been using to author, which is Quarto. And prior to that, the R Markdown ecosystem. And so, the nice thing about this, I think, is that it's, if I'm right in terms of the package contributors, that this package is being developed and supported by the same people that are giving us the broader authoring platform of Quarto. And so you would think, just because of that, that maybe there's a little more compatibility. And so I think this is where we're going to spend most of our time with the tables. And this is the package that most people seemed to be using when they're rendering a PDF via Quarto using the Typist specifications. Man, this gets it gets very vocabulary-y, doesn't it? So a lot of lexicon here. Now they have some nice snippets here in terms of pictures of tables. I'm not sure. I didn't follow up on this. So it looks to me like some of these might be specific to different output formats. This lower right-hand table is kind of what we're aiming for here. It looks like it's a regression table or a general linear model table in terms of a statistical table, giving parameter estimates and confidence intervals or significance levels. But regardless of the content, the actual structure of it, that APA-ish looking table with a solid line at the top, and then indicating that we're now moving beyond the header after content, the column names come up, and then the solid line at the bottom as well. This to me looks like it might be rendered in a traditional PDF. That's kind of how they tend to look. So we'll come back to this, but I think we'll we'll try GT first. That's where I did all of my kind of pre-tonight research was in exploring GT and seeing what kind of formatting options come baked in with that package. And again, it was just kind of comforting knowing that the people who are supporting it are likely posit people. So I think we'll spend time on that. And then before I sat down, I'm not sure if this would work or not, but I have forced table formats in standard scripted PDFs using fantastic package that I love called Papaja. And the package name itself, I think we have on this channel, I think we put forward a tutorial. I'm pretty sure we cut it up. We've gone over this before, but I think we cut it up in terms of how to go about using Papaja. Now that I've mentioned it, I don't remember if we used APA Quarto, which is kind of the version of Papaja that's tailored specifically for Quarto, this new authoring platform. One of the two we've put a little tutorial out there on. The APA, sorry, Papaja itself, the more longer tenured package, has a very nice table function in it, and that table function is just APA table. And Papaja it is flexible enough to have different styles of documents to be rendered to, for example, a Word document or a PDF. I haven't tried it. It probably won't work, but it's something that is easy enough that we could go ahead and try as well. So I think what we'll do tonight is let's do our low-hanging fruit first, which is citations, and then we'll go to the tables, and then we'll see if we can get to those bottom three elements. And then there's one in here, like I said, I think, yeah, I did forget to put it in, which would be hyperlinked images, because that's another element that's in our current syllabus that we want to try to replicate. So this is going to be another couple of weeks, almost assuredly, just based on the number of things that we have to actually do, and based on the fact that even though I'm not anymore a full-time professor, I can still be fairly long-winded. And I see it's already 23 minutes in, and we try to keep this to about an hour, so that's another reason that this will probably go a couple of weeks. So let's take a look at citations. The other thing I think I wanted to mention is last week, what we did was we basically ported all this content over and simply changed the format here on line 5 from PDF to Typist. And it's a lot of information. It's a 270 lines of code specification for the content that's rendered on the left. So I think rather than starting big and then kind of tailor fitting the components that we need one by one, I think we'll start smaller and then just build from there. And if we get all these individual elements to work, then we should be able to port those over, and we can do kind of a big take all the content from the current specification, put it over, and then just tweak the little Typist bits that we know we have to tweak. All right. So as long as everybody's on board with that, let's do that. Let's start small, build up, and we'll try to get at least these two things done tonight, citations and tables. So let's start from scratch. And I am going to use a project folder, however, because there's a couple of things that I want to store in there. And it's just easier to find files if you use a project folder. So if you're in RStudio, it's new file. It's new project. And then you'll walk through a wizard. A lot of my projects are hosted on GitHub, and so I would use this version control branch of the wizard. You can just use one of these two, new directory or existing directory. I've already walked through there, and I have this Typist that's available. You can see the kind of small font, but you can see the location on this particular computer that I stored this project in. So the one thing I guess that I miss when we just work on local projects like this is I love that Git tab that appears on my layout. It's the upper right hand pane here. That is fantastic for just keeping track of all the things that have happened the current session that you're working in. So instead of that, I'm looking in the file folder here in the lower right. That's fine. It's information. It's just not information regarding whether it's been updated or not. So so let's just try a Typist document. We'll start from scratch. This is not currently an option available directly from the wizard. You can create an empty document that doesn't have the template information in it, but I don't know. I've always just started with something like this that does have a little bit of content in it. Even though we're not interested in the content, it can be helpful to see if it actually works. We will leave the HTML for now. We can change the title. Let's do that. Let's change it to the title of this class. There is a second title on here. You can probably, I don't want to derail this right away, so let's just leave the title in for now. We'd probably just maybe put that in the name field and see what that renders like before we try to tweak it at all. In terms of saving it, you can see I already have a couple of, I'm not sure why they're coming up as Internet Explorer file types. I must have had a weird association at some point that I had made. But there's a couple of templates that we have there of trying this. This is a folder I'm just going to blow up at some point anyway, so I don't mind proliferating the types of files in here. Although they should have better names than try2 and Typist, right? It's a beautiful day. We'll call it Robin, because all the robins that I've been seeing here outside of Minneapolis, beautiful Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I think one of the things that we will do is we'll go back and forth a little bit between an HTML document and a Typist document and see what kind of information we get. Again, content here, it's kind of immaterial. If I write Typist, formatting should look a little different. Again, the quick rendering looks a lot different, doesn't it? I am getting the centering by default of the title, which is what I want. It's a different font here. It's a little bigger here, and the actual font itself is different as well. I like this. I actually like this font. I might leave it. Although if we're trying to fully replicate, I guess we'll have to probably try to tweak it. The table we're going to come back to. We're going to skip ahead and see if we can get these textbooks in there. And so I am going to do a Google Scholar search for the rendering of this text. And the way that I grab these citations is I'll try to find the reference on Google Scholar, and Google Scholar has this nice little citation option with the double quotes underneath what you've found. And then there's a BibTeX formatting of it, and this BibTeX sometimes needs a little tweaking, but generally speaking, you can Control A, Control C if you're on a PC, Command A, Command C if you're on a Mac, and get that information. Now, being in a project folder is nice because I can just open up. I usually do this in Notepad, so I'll just save that as my bibliography. And if you're in Notepad, just make sure you kind of pay attention to some of the defaults that it's trying to choose for you. Now, I forgot I actually forgot where we had this. I think it was desktop typist. By the way, this is the issue I've always had. Finding where something is on your computer is the issue that I continue to have the most issues with in terms of my students who are trying to do stuff like this. So we can just call it. I already have some information in here because of what we were working with last week, but we didn't go very far with this. So we'll just call it class bib. And the extension on these bib files is usually .bib. Now, if I look at my files here, I see it, I can access it, I can edit it here if I want to. The thing I want to pay attention to is the tag, how we're actually identifying this reference. And then in Markdown or Quarto, it's at that tag, as long as you call out the bibliography. Now, the bibliography currently is in our project folder, but it's not being asked for within within the file itself. So I got so many things open here. Let me try to keep the stuff we need and get rid of the stuff that we don't. So now that we're gonna have to start playing with the formatting a little bit. So again, the indentations are important up here. So I'm gonna hard return after format tab if your tab is operational. If not, it's 2 spaces, and then another colon after the document type, and then underneath there is where I'm going to start to give it some information that's specific to our rendering. And because it's in our project folder, I don't have to worry about telling it where it is. It knows where to look. And actually, let's see what happens before we do that. So the expectation is it's not going to find this, so we'll probably get an error there. The document itself should still render. It's not going to have much. It's going to have a 1 second level heading with the word Quarto on it. But we'll go ahead and see what that renders like with the expectation that there's going to be an error. It really didn't like that. Doesn't contain a bibliography. That's a very helpful, it's a very helpful error message, isn't it? I appreciate that. See if it works in HTML. It should still render, but yeah, just it's interpreting that as just text. Okay, so, well, let's keep it in HTML for now. And I'm going to, because I think we're going to want to go back and forth between HTML and Typist a little bit to stress this. Now the expectation with the bibliography is that it will now find that. And so you see that in the text of the document, it's giving it a reference, and then in the reference section, it's giving the full citation. Now, if we change that to a typist, so a couple of things that we want to change if we're to look at what we're aiming for here. Where did you go? Where did you go? A couple of things in the body of the document itself. We have the full citation in the American Psychological Association 7th edition, the most recent edition style. I think it's the 7th. And there is no, it's a syllabus. There's no reference section typically in syllabi or syllabuses. So, so we're going to need to tweak that. That we should be able to do in the YAML of our document. But let's see if Typist works here before we do anything. The formatting expectation is the formatting is very likely to be different, and so this is using a square bracket and number of the reference to indicate it, and then it's again rendered in the bibliography. We don't want a bibliography, so in the YAML we should be able to suppress that. Suppress, and that should be a true or false. So let's see what happens. Of course, it doesn't work. See if that works with HTML. Okay, so again, we're really gonna have to, I'm really gonna have to pay attention to functionality in this format in terms of what's portable across these across different rendered outputs and what's not. What threw us last week was I typically use Cable and Cable Extra. Now Cable I think is just wrapped into the base R. Cable Extra is a package that you need to install. But I've had great success using that package for tables, and it was working with HTML documents and and traditional PDFs, but it was not working within Typist. And we're also seeing the suppressed bibliography is not working either. We'll come back to that. The other thing that I would like to do is to get a full reference here instead of just an in-text reference. So usually go to, there's a couple ways to do that as well. One of the ways that I've found to do that is to actually get a CSL file that says go ahead and do that. And so I think the one that I've been using that gives you, when you ask for an in-text citation, it's going to give you the entire citation. So we'll go ahead and use that one. And there's all kinds of different tweakings you can do. You can see I've already downloaded this, so I've used this one before. It is the 7th edition, is the most recent, at least that Zotero has. And so this is just zotero.org /styles. You can, we've played with these before. You can get all sorts of different citations. I think the one that is currently being rendered in Typist looks to me like an IEEE type of reference. What's the other? MLA? I know sometimes students are asked to format something using MLA as well. That doesn't look that different, does it? The year is moved to the end. That's different, but otherwise looks fairly similar. The way to call this up is we should be able to just put a CSL line on at the same level of indentation as we have our bibliography specified. Now I said that, but we also tried to suppress bibliography and that did not work with Typist. So we need to find our CSL files that we want. I'm going to change the name of this right away because I hate those trailing parentheses. Oh, crying out loud. All right, we'll change it later, I guess. Let's go ahead and copy that. I'm going to find my project folder. I'm going to paste it in there. Get rid of the old one just so we can make sure that this one actually works. I said I'll get rid of the parenthesis, but we'll leave it just to show that it should hopefully work. Spaces, I'm really kind of paranoid about spaces and file names. The expectation is that it's going to blow something up. So that's not anything that I do with ever, really. But we'll see what happens. I really don't like the space. And it's possible if we enclose that with double quotes that would take care of it. But let's just see what happens. So what we currently have here is first initial, second initial, last name, and no ampersand. First initial, second initial, surname, the italicized title, and then the date is at the very end. That should be the most observable thing that changes if this actually works. We'll see. Didn't work, so we're not gonna be worried quite yet because I think I know what's going on. But let's see what it looks like in HTML. Again, as kind of a back and forth for us as we're seeing if this information works. That does work in HTML. I think what we're actually missing is something that's, I believe, specific to the Quarto format, and that is site proc. And so site proc is going to turn on citation processing within this rendering itself. I think that's what we want. So we'll try that with Typist, and we'll see if it catches. I mean, the good thing that we saw was that this space didn't, in the HTML rendering, it was able to actually do an APA style on that citation. Yay. And there, okay, good. So we actually do get it. That's biz. Oh, interesting. Okay. So our other issue that we said is, we're going to have to figure it out, was that before we put site proc true, we weren't getting the suppression of our bibliography like we wanted. Now we are. So fantastic. This is everything we wanted. If I want to format it a little bit different to be consistent with the existing syllabus, where are you, existing syllabus? What's different? It looks like there's a couple differences. I guess I just don't have the addition in there. So I can put an addition in the bib if we want to actually tweak it. There's a couple of ways to do that. There should be an addition field as well. It might be volume, but we can do a search for, we got to get to the tables. So I shouldn't be spending this much time on it, but we'll see if we can find edition as a field. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Issue number is not what we want. It's funny that edition isn't coming up. Pretty straightforward there. They're saying just call it edition. We'll try. We'll see if we can add that. So edition, not 3 edition, edition. And then in Quarto and R Markdown, the specification of the references uses this curly bracket notation. So many things open. I'm trying to. What's the new one? That's good. They look similar, so it's not that, we're not noticing it. Oh, I also have the wrong publisher. So we could just put 9th edition after the title, but we don't want to do that. So we'll try 9th. And then maybe change publisher. I think it's the same company. I think it just got acquired maybe by a bigger one. Hey, look at that. So it did render well. Got the 9th edition, even though we just put 9th, it comes up with the edition. Now the proper, publishing house is on there. So now it looks similar to this. The margins are a little different. The font's a little different, so we could change that. Required text. We don't have that, so let's put required text in. I think the second level heading is going to work fine, so we can leave that. The spacing, I don't know if we can play with that. So that might not be a this week thing. That might be a next week thing. But we'll play with the spacing again in the, not because it's necessary, but in the learning exercise of trying to replicate this using Typist specifications. Okay, so let's get to the table. Table is kind of the big one that we stumbled with last week because we had tried to use table specifications that I've used in the past and have worked, and I think we're going to probably need to try a different package. And so the package that keeps getting recommended is that GT. And so we'll go ahead and put a code chunk in, and we'll load that library. Yeah, there. Oh my goodness, how long has that been going on? I've been talking steadily this whole time, and I just found out my mic is muted. Let me check my settings here. Hopefully, I guess I'm back on. Sorry about that. I have no idea when that started. I had a bunch of windows minimized. So I gave you the directions to find all the money in the world that I'm aware of. It's all buried somewhere, so just go back and see if you can read my lips. Then you can find it. So we're going to use this GT package, which I'm not familiar with, but it's the one that tends to be favored for these typist files. I'm going to access the slides myself so I can find the hyperlink that we had to the GT. There's the lady on the table again, the GT help page. And so introduction to creating GT tables. I thought this was actually pretty helpful to a point. So at some point I kind of had to get off this page. And let's go ahead and just do a simple specification. So it's just GT GT table. They use this native base R piping, which this is the first I've seen it. So it was, I think, introduced at least 2 or 3 years ago. I'm still used to the McGritter formatting, the percent caret or percent arrow percent. This is now native, so you don't need a package for it, but it's still weird to see, I think. So we'll use it. We'll see if it works. The formatting that we were getting looks very similar to this. And again, it's not that far away from what our goal is, which is this, or something like this. I mean, because I do have 2 different table formats here, we could try for that, or we could try for this standard one, which looks more like an APA formatted table with 2 solid lines embracing or on either above and below the column names. But I did find some specifications that I think we can tweak on these tables that will do things like get rid of the middle row little lines. It's not prominent, but they're there. So we'd want to get rid of that. So the way see if I can find something that will speed this up just a little bit, which is take a look at what I was doing earlier. And what I was doing earlier was combining some of the suggestions that they had with some formatting options that I'd found that were good. And one of the formatting options I think that we're going to want to play with is this tab style. So tab just means table, not tab. It doesn't mean tab like a book tab or a tab that you might see in a HTML file. It's shorthand for table. So there's all kinds of different options within tab style that we can play with that will help with what that table is actually rendered like. So let's give ourselves some content here. We might as well take it from this document itself. So there's a hyperlink on there as well, and we'll see if we can get that. Don't you hate it when your professors say office hours by appointment? That's kind of, I don't know, bad professor here. So let's create a data file, and really what we have, I guess, if I look at it now, it's kind of like a transposed normal table. So what I have there is, it looks to me like there's 5 variables: lectures, labs, rooms, professor, office hours, but they're located in rows, not in columns. So I think it doesn't matter. So we'll go ahead and just make an entire column. So we'll call it col1, and we'll concatenate that. So that'll be consisting of lectures, and we'll put these all in double quotes, of course. Labs, and we'll leave the colons there. Professor, office hours. Okay. I think that's it. That's all we need for column 1. And one of the reasons I like RStudio as an IDE is I like the editing capability in terms of things like this. So double quotes, I can just highlight everything I want. And if you were in a normal word editor, word processor, and you tried to append a character there, it would just overwrite what you have highlighted. RStudio is smart enough to know that you want to apply that. And then we'll do col2. So this one's a little messier, I guess. So I might we'll go ahead and leave the kind of blocking that we have on this. And the required text, I didn't mean, we already have that, so we don't need that. We do want the double quotes again. And then an end parenthesis there. And I think GT, my understanding, a little bit I did looking into it, is it's expecting a data frame. So we'll go ahead and see, we can C-bind these if it's column 1 and column 2. So we'll say class, and that's a C-bind for col1, col2. And if it does want, if it is saying that it actually wants a data frame, I'm going to do a as.data.frame around that. So I'm going to further wrap that C-bind. We have enough here where we should probably just see if this is working. So that's fine. Now I have column 1, column 2. We're going to want to get rid of those, obviously, but that's okay. We should be able to not print those. Everything else looks like what we want it to. Again, the email address, we might have to play with the actual rendering of that. But let's try to force this into a GT table, and we can use the piping that they use as well. I think yeah, the actual command itself, the least the most basic command. It's been a long day. The most basic command is just GT, so we can try GT class and see what that looks like. Again, we'll probably have to go in there and change those column headings. That shouldn't be too much of an issue. So there's my first go at a table. That's kind of what we got last week too, and you can see the formatting is not consistent with what we actually want. I didn't notice this last week, but looks like there's a default font on here as well that's different. So we'll change that. I'm gonna take the echo off of here, just because we don't need that in our file. So we'll use the recommended Quarto specifications instead of the old R Markdown ones. And the three that tend to be the culprits here when we're talking about this gray bit of text. Echo is giving us exactly the code we use. I use it all the time in the slides, but we don't need it tonight. The warnings and messages are the other ones that tend to kind of clutter your document. So there we go. And let's take a look and see what this looks like with an HTML file. I don't know if that site proc true is. It should be okay, but it's not necessary with an HTML file. It should just kind of not do anything. The formatting is quite a bit different. You're getting that striping by default. We're gonna take out those lines. So the lines are definitely coming through in Typist, and we're gonna add lines. So we're gonna take out most of the lines, and then we can add lines to the top and bottom. So I'm gonna have to bump out pretty soon, but we'll at least get these lines taken out. Sorry about that. I'm way too long-winded, aren't I? I think that's it. Way too long-winded. So the command that I found that looked like it was helpful is this tab style, and we'll try the piping. If we do, if you put your cursor there and just do an F1, it usually pulls up on a PC. It pulls up the help page related to that command or that function, and so we see that. And again, I think there's different ways to actually do this, and you can see that I was playing with a couple of different things, but the one that seemed to be most directly relevant was tab style, where we can talk about things like borders. And so there's all kinds of different ways to focus in on the area that you want to apply. This cell's body specification is just saying, give me everything that's not a header. Give me everything that's not the column specifications in terms of column names. And so the way in which I was able to get this to work earlier is just to give the cell borders themselves a really low weight. So just 0 pixel, no weight, I guess. But we can see what happens if we try that with a higher weight. And I'm going to copy this that I've used before, and we'll try the piping operator, the native piping operator, and see if it works without any further libraries. Feels weird doing that without asking for tidyverse or magritter or the standard packages that tend to rely on. Yay! So we don't want that, but this is telling us that what we do want to do is operative, right? So we might retain that actually for the top in the bottom. That's a little much, but we could probably try, just back that off a little bit. And the location right now that's saying everything, every cell within the body of the table, we can back that down, and we will back that down. There's another location which is not the cell body, but it's the header itself, and that is something that we can also play with. But if we go down to, well, let's see what this looks like as an HTML file first. So the HTML file doesn't look all that different. It looks nicer, doesn't it? Maybe we should write our syllabi in HTML. Maybe that should be a thing. The striping I like. It's not something that's coming through in Typist. We could add that if we wanted to. Just we could go row by row. It wouldn't be very efficient, but we could actually do it. I guess we can look in HTML and see what that. It's not going to be as prominent here because we do have striping. So even though we're asking for the weight of the borders to be 0, it does look a little different, but the striping is still there. You see, it's retaining the border where we want it. It's just that the weight of it is really small, so we'd have to play with that. So let's go to Typist. See what that looks like. And so, I mean, silly. How silly is this? But it's been, I don't know how long we've been trying just to get rid of those little lines. Just get rid of those little lines. So the GT packet, and again, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to call this a little earlier than I wanted to tonight. But so the GT package is giving us the functionality to control the formatting such that we can get specific with where the lines are and where the lines are not. So yay. So this is going to be usable. This is what we want to do. It's not in final format right now. But next week, I think what we'll do is we'll take this baby steps and we'll get it in final format in terms of we can change the font. That should be easy. And then we'll give it a line on top and we'll give it a line on the bottom. We should be able to do that using the same commands that we just used to get rid of the intermediate lines. Okay, so thanks for coming. Again, sorry I gotta kind of bow out a little earlier tonight. I do have a comment. Hey, Max. Sorry I didn't see you there, Max. Copilot. No, I haven't, Max, because I was talking a little earlier. I've been kind of keeping away from AI. That not intentionally, I guess. I feel like I need a class or something on it. I feel like I need some more formal instruction because my mind just keeps going to it's a Google on steroids, and I know that that's not the proper way to think about it and use it. So it's a stupid reason, but that's in my head. That's kind of why I haven't tried an integration, but I should. So I think probably what I will do one of these weeks is we'll do that. I mean, we're checking out features of these authoring platforms, so why not, right? I agree, but it will be getting better over it. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Because when we're saying getting better over time, we're not talking about 4 years, 5 years. The advancements that these things are making are scary for a guy that kind of grew up in the 90s. I don't know. My formative years are probably the 1990s. And I probably hold that in too high of regard and esteem. The rate of change that we're seeing on this technology is just like, I don't know. It makes me feel like that was my formative years was a different dimension, different world, different lifetime. All right, sorry guys. I actually gotta bust out. Thanks for popping by. Thanks for being patient with this as we're trying to learn Typist. This is good progress. This should be able to take and just get it over the finish line next week on the formatting here. All right, everybody have a good rest of the week.